Usual. Alan doesn't talk in the microphone. Thank you to all the donors for this event to make it possible. Thank you to Mickey for doing all the details. Thanks to Paula for selling the books, and Paula recruited from Wellspring today and found some. We have two of our former Wellspring students here who are now grown-ups, Jessica, Emily, and hopefully we'll have many more in the future. Nick for doing the sound, and Charlie for doing the sound. And Charlie's kind of famous for doing this. He's stepping down to Hocking County tonight. Enjoying it anyway. And thanks to all of you for just coming. So I'm going to start off with a little talk. Seems that every time you listen to the news, there's some new tragedy. And I've found that for myself, and I think that this is a little more widespread, that sometimes the only antidote is putting beauty into the world. If you could do that, it shows that we're still caring human beings. And years ago, I heard a story. Why don't you guys play for a little bit? And then I'll
Tell the story.
1991, in Sarajevo, the city was under siege. It was a terrible war, neighbors killing neighbors. And people were hungry. One day there was a rumor that a bakery had opened with fresh bread. People lined up, and a mortar shell killed 22 people. A man named Vedran Smilovich, who was a cellist at the opera, every day for 22 days, went into the crater and played his cello, and he played the adagio that you just heard. And he did this under duress of soldiers, snipers, but he just kept putting his beauty into the world. And other cellists around the world started playing in unison with him at the same time every day. So I was really moved by this story. I wrote a poem about it, and I'd like to share that with you. This was written in 2005, and my good friend Greg Kimura, who wrote the poem Cargo, which is on a poster that we'd like everyone to take with them. He helped edit this poem with me, so it's a fond memory. Greg died 6 years ago, almost to the day. Tommaso Albinoni could never have imagined Sarajevo as he crafted the notes of his adagio. The son of a wealthy man, he had no cares and devoted himself to music, a self-proclaimed dilettante, indulging himself in beauty. The adagio enfolds the listener, 7 minutes of deliberate playing, slowing the breath as the bow strokes the strings. The cello's voice, so human, words murmured behind a secret door. In the hell of Sarajevo, rumors of fresh bread, a connection to a normal world, now so far away. They stood in anticipation, the smell so tantalizing as the bakery disappeared in the blast of mortar shell. For 22 days, one for each of these neighbors, he carried his cello to the crater, clad in black and white, music on the stand. Amidst snipers and rubble, playing Albinoni's adagio for them and for himself. Like Orpheus, ascending on the music from the underworld of despair. Tommaso wrote music for the pure simple joy of it. With Vedran descended the adagio's minor chords to find the steady pulse, the precise and stately dance on the path leading out of hell, dipping into the wells of practice, waters of beauty seeping into his and our being. Every stroke, a conscious vote to return, each note, a step on the shattered path to life. going with the idea of putting beauty into the world. We're going to put one of the things in that I consider the most beautiful thing and most important thing we have, and that's the imagination of our young people. And Jocelyn, if you could come up and join me, please. This is Jocelyn Bay. She was one of the participants in the Poetry Out Loud contest and did very well in it. And she's going to share her poem with you. Is this one you want?
Hi everybody, my name is Jocelyn Bew. I was a regional and state competitor in the Poetry Out Loud competition, and I will be sharing with you 2 of the poems that I performed there with you today. And my first one will be Author's Prayer by Leah Kaminsky.
Wow.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. If I speak for the dead, I must leave this animal of my body. I must write the same poem over and over for an empty page as the white flag of their surrender. If I speak for them, I must walk on the edge of myself. I must live as a blind man who runs through rooms without touching the furniture. Yes, I live. I can cross the streets asking, what year is it? I can dance in my sleep and laugh in front of the mirror. Even sleep is a prayer, Lord. I will praise your madness and, in a language not mine, speak of music that wakes us, music in which we move. For whatever I say is a kind of petition, and the darkest days I must praise. My next poem will be Portrait of My Gender as Inaudible by Meg Day. I knew I was a god when you could not agree on my name, and still none you spoke could force me to listen closer. Is this the nothing the antelope felt when Adam lit on his own entitlement of family, genus, species? So many descendants became doctors, delivered babies, bestow bodies' names as if to say it is to make it so. Can it be a comfort between us, the fact of my creation? I was made in the image of a thing without an image, and silence too is your invention. Who prays for God to appear, except to appear with answers, but never a body, a voice? If I told you, you wouldn't believe me, because I was the one to say it. If I too am a conductor of air, the only praise I know is in stereo. One pair, an open hand and closed fist will have to do. I made a photograph of my name. There's a shadow in a field, and I put my shadow in it. You can't hear me, but I'm there.
How's this?
That's much
Better?
better.
Closer.
Yeah.
Better?
Yeah. Yes, much better.
I doubt there's a single person in this audience tonight that knows how difficult it is to find a polygraph expert on a Saturday morning in Logan, Ohio. So I now have confidence to read this introduction for our first storyteller. I read this last night and I had my severe doubts about it. But after this polygraph today, I can say this with complete sincerity. Storyteller Will Harniak was orphaned at an early age when the light plane carrying his missionary parents crashed in the jungles of northeastern Peru's Amazon basin. The lone survivor of that crash, Will was rescued by indigenous Shipibo Indians and raised as a tribal storyteller and shaman. By chance, a team of Swiss pharmacologists studying medicinal plants of the Amazon befriended Will and eventually funded his education at the Sorbonne in Paris in ethnobotany. Will currently lives in Milwaukee, Oregon, but resides primarily in his imagination, where facts rarely intrude upon a good story. Introduce my brother.
Bear with me here. Oh, great. Yeah, there we go. Free at last, free at last. All right, well done. How you doing tonight? Good. Thanks for coming out. It's great to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation to Alan, and also Alan and Evie's incredible hospitality, and all the work that everybody else has put into this great festival. And for this beautiful place, let's just give it up for all the people that have brought us together. A poem to start with. I am hawk on a cliff. I am a stag of 7 times. I am a boar for valor. I am salmon in a pool. I am a hill of poetry. I am a word of skill. I am the fire of thought in the mind of man. I am the clash of weapons. I am the point of spears. I am the dew on the grass, the tears of heaven. I am a lake on a plain. I am the sound of a woman's voice wooing a man to pillow. Who but I knows where the sun goes to rest? Who but I knows the ages of the moon? Who but I spreads light now upon the gathering hills? And those are the words, of course, of Stormy Daniels. Bill Lepp told me that. Those are the words of Amerdeen, who was the first Celt to put foot on Ireland, and to use those words. Approximately in the year 600 AD. Alan remembers it well. I want to tell you one of those stories that starts not with thrice upon a time, nor twice upon a time, but how does it start?
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time, in a time that was so long ago. It was a time before we captured time in clocks and pinned it on walls. Before we wore time on our wrists. Before we divided time into days and hours and seconds and nanoseconds. It was in a time before so many people were doing hard time. It was in a time when people just seemed to have time. In that long ago time, there was a vast and beautiful realm, a realm of great spires of ancient trees and clear flowing streams and wild game and great boars and stags and great spires of mountains. And in that realm, there was a Tsar who was powerful, and he was as wicked as he was powerful. But the Tsar had in his service a hunter, noble and loyal, straight and true and swift as the arrows of his quiver. And the hunter had in his service a powerful horse with eyes like fire and hooves of iron and a great courageous heart pounding in a strong chest. And one day the hunter, he did what he loved most to do. He leapt upon the great steed and they flew out of the palace across the wide, wide earth beneath the great sky, devouring great quantities of space, for there were great quantities of space to devour in that realm. And on they flew. And at last they slowed for they came to the edge of a deep woods. And now the hunter was in the woods, the horse behind him, and was hunting stealthily, quietly, hour upon hour upon hour. His eyes open to all movement, his ears attuned to any sound. And in that way he hunted for hours and hours. And finally he said, "These woods are too quiet. Something is wrong." And then he noticed a strange light coming from deep inside in the very middle of that vast forest. It was a strange light. It wasn't the light of a fire. It wasn't the light of sunlight. It was a radiance he'd never seen before. And as he approached the woods, then he could see, upon a bed of moss ringed by these great trees, there was an enormous golden glowing feather. It was an enormous feather. He'd never seen anything so beautiful, and he knew right away. For the feather seemed to be on fire. It had heat. It was glowing. It even gave him warmth, even from a distance. And he said, "Now this is a feather that has fallen from the breast of the firebird." For sometimes the great firebird would fly across the woods, and sometimes a feather would fall from its breast upon the earth. They were very valuable and very rare, but the hunter had never seen anything so beautiful. And he was attracted to it, and he came closer, closer, and he knelt to it like a monk in a church, and he reached out, and as he did, he felt the earth trembling beneath him. And he turned, for it was the hoof of his horse pounding upon the earth. And the horse, who was very wise, and being in a fairy tale could speak, he said, "Hunter, mark my words. If you pick up that feather, you will know the meaning of trouble." You'll know the meaning of what?
Trouble.
And of course, the hunter, he knew his horse always had his best interest in mind. And so he backed away from the feather. And he said, "Thank you, my horse." But he looked upon the feather again, and it was so beautiful and so alluring, you see, and it drew him to it. And he reached down again, and again the horse said, "Hunter, I told you, if you picked up the feather, you'd know the meaning of what?
Trouble.
And the hunter said, "Indeed, I probably will know the meaning of trouble, but if I don't pick it up, my horse, I think I will know the meaning of regret as well. Not only that, I'm thinking that perhaps if I do pick up the feather and return with it swiftly to the Tsar, I may know the meaning of a great boon or a blessing or a reward." Why do we do this? Have you ever done this? Has anyone not done this? He reached out and he took the feather. He leapt upon the horse, and again they thundered across the wide, wide earth beneath the great sky. And the guards and the parapets, they saw the hunter from a distance. Can you be the guards and the parapets? And they cried out and they said, "The hunter returns!"
The hunter returns.
This is an ancient oral tradition called keeping the audience awake. It's very important. And the doors of the courtyard, they flew open. And the hunter, he leapt off the horse. He gained an audience with the Tsar, and he came into the great throne room. The ministers were assembled, the Tsar upon the throne, and he said, "Hunter, you have returned. Hunter, you have come from the wildest part of the realm. What news do you bring, Hunter? Have you seen the great silver-antlered stag? Have you brought a boar for the feasting table? Hunter, what news do you bring?" And the hunter, he was silent. He knelt before the Tsar, and he took from his cloak the great golden feather. It was so brilliant. It illuminated the entire chamber. And people there, they saw ways that they never saw ways that they'd never seen before. They knew feelings they'd never felt before. They had thoughts they'd never thought before. And of course, the feather was so brilliant that it also created great shadows. And in those shadows, the ministers, they spoke and they conspired and they spoke to the Tsar, who turned to the hunter and said, "Hunter, you have done well. Never has a feather of a firebird been brought to a Tsar. But Hunter, I'm also thinking a thought. I never would have thought, had you not returned with the feather of a firebird. My thought is this: if you can bring me the feather of a firebird, why can't you bring me the whole firebird? In fact, I'm now thinking that if that firebird is not perched in a golden cage in my courtyard in 3 days' time, your head will no longer be perched upon your shoulders. Bring me the firebird." went out to his horse. He was trembling. And the horse said, "What is it, hunter? What do you fear?" And the hunter, he said, "My horse, I brought to my Tsar the feather of a firebird. And now I must bring him the entire firebird, or I will lose my head." And the horse said, "Hunter, I think I told you. If you picked up the... you'd know the meaning of...
Trouble.
But the trouble is not right now. It is before you always do what I tell you. Go to the Tsar and get these things. Get the finest grain and the strongest nets and return to me." And the hunter did exactly that. He came back to the horse, and together they flew out, away from the palace, through the deepest of woods, at the edges of the wide fens and the wildest places, and up higher and higher and higher into the highest parts of the realm. And they arrived at a great field. And in the midst of the field there was a great tree. And the hunter took the finest golden grain, and all night long, by the light of the moon, he spread out the grain, and spread out the grain, and spread out the grain. He covered the entire field with the finest golden grain. And in the morning, there came the sound of wing beats. And the hunter, who was hiding in the tree, he looked up to see this enormous fire flying up from behind the sun and moving in great circles around the earth. And the firebird looked down, for now the sun was gleaming upon an entire field of golden grain, reflecting light here, there, and everywhere. And the firebird said, "I have never seen so much grain," which happens to be my favorite food, and I'm hungry. And the firebird, who was a great mythical creature, but also was a bird, he flew and landed upon the grain. But he noticed, he said, "There is an old horse grazing at the edge of the field, but what danger is there to a swift bird like myself from an old horse like that?" But that old horse, he was as cunning as he was powerful. And he grazed now slowly and haphazardly towards the firebird. He was now standing right beside him. And he reached out with an iron hoof, and he pinned down the tail of the bird, who cried out, "Give me my life!" But the horse said, "Hunter, come now!" And the hunter leapt from the tree and took the strongest of nets, and up and up and up they flew, and out they spread, and down they came. And the firebird, which had only known freedom, now knew captivity. For the hunter gathered up the bird, leapt upon the horse, and together, horse and hunter and firebird, they flew across the earth beneath the wide sky. And the guards of the parapets, they saw them coming, and they said, "Ready, the hunter returns!"
The hunter returns.
And of course, the doors opened, and he came in, and the fire was so brilliant. It illuminated the entire palace and the courtyards, and the people gathered around in the entire realm now. They saw in ways they'd never seen, new feelings they had never known. And the Tsar said, "Hunter, you have done well. Take that great firebird and put him in a golden cage in my courtyard, where he will remain for the rest of his days." And in no time at all, the firebird, which had only known freedom, now knew captivity. And day upon day, he lost his radiance, and feathers of gold began to fall from him. But the Tsar said to the hunter, "You have done well. I will give you gold, I will give you land, I will give you creatures to graze upon the land. But hunter, you know, I'm now thinking another thought. I never would have thought, had you not returned with a firebird. And my thought is this: if you can bring me the firebird, certainly you can bring me Princess Vasilisa, the only princess I've ever wanted to meet and marry. But there's one small problem. Maybe two. She lives at the edge of the world. From there you must go to the edge of the ocean. I know you'll need time. I think 3 days should be sufficient. And if Vasilisa is not seated in the throne beside me in 3 days' time, your head will no longer be seated upon your shoulders. Bring me the princess." And again he went to the horse, and he was weeping now. And the horse said, "Why do you weep?" And he said, "Now I brought the entire firebird. I must find the Princess Vasilisa, who lives at the edge of the world, at the edge of the ocean." And the horse said, "I think I told you. If you picked up the feather, you know the meaning of
Trouble.
And yet the trouble is before you. It is not right. Now do exactly what I tell you to do. Go to the Tsar, and you have to get these 4 things. You must get a silk tent with a golden dome. He must get the finest food, the oldest, most powerful of wines, and get a harp to strum and return to me. And the hunter did that. And he leapt upon the back of the horse, and they flew out. On and on and on they rode to the very edge of the world. And if you've never been there, it is quite a sight, because there was the most beautiful, vast blue ocean. And the hunter, he was a man of the realm. He was a man of the forests and the high steppes and the deep marshes and the fens. He had never seen the ocean. And upon looking at it, his spirit, it just seemed to go out from him upon those waves and into those winds. And he felt a longing come out from his heart, a longing he knew not what was for. But still, he was a hunter under the command of the Tsar. He put up the great silk tent with a golden dome. And of course, he set out the finest food you could imagine. He uncorked the oldest wine. And day upon day, he brought beautiful things from the woods, fine flowers and ferns, and he decorated the great tent inside. And at last, he took his harp. Each day, he came to the edge of the world, and he would play. And the sound of the harp and the song from the hunter's heart would go out from him. And one day, as sometimes happened, the wind blew across the ocean upon the land. Can you give me some wind? It's much stronger. And again. And as the wind sometimes will do, didn't the wind come onto the land? Didn't it swirl into the tent? Didn't it lift up the fine aroma of the food and carry it out? Didn't it lift up the aroma of the wine? Oh, it did. And it carried it out across the waves. It even took the sound of the harp and the song from the hunter's heart farther and farther out to the very edge of the ocean, where the powerful princess of the waves, Vasilisa, was rowing this boat, rowing and rowing across the ocean with the wind. Ready, wind? And she said, the smell of fine food. And then it came again, and she said, the smell of old, powerful, fine wine. And she said, a Cabernet. She really knew her wine. And when the wind blew again, of course, it brought the sound of the harp and the song from the hunter's heart. And she looked in the direction from which all of that had come, and she saw this tent made of silk with a golden dome, and the sun was gleaming upon it. And she thought, whoever it is upon this earth that would come to the very edge of the world and erect a silk tent with a golden dome and make fine food and uncork old wine and play the harp and sing a gorgeous song, that would be someone I would like to meet. And she rowed her boat in the direction of the land and the tent, and as she did, a voice in the wind said, Vasilisa, if you row this boat to that shore and you climb that shore to that tent, you'll know the meaning of trouble. And she said, of course I will. She said, what thing worth doing does not involve trouble? And she said, and if I don't row this boat to that shore and see who lives in that tent, I will know the meaning of what? Regret. And so she rowed to the shore. She climbed up the cliffs, and she came and she saw this hunter who bowed to her. For he had never seen anyone so radiant, so powerful, so beautiful as she. He said, Vasilisa, welcome. Welcome. You have rowed a long way. Would you care for food? And she said, I am hungry. And he brought her into the tent and gave her the finest food she had ever eaten. And then he said, Vasilisa, would you care for wine? And she said, well, usually I just say no to alcohol, but being in a fairy tale, And she took a gulp, and it was old and powerful wine. And then they began to speak. And you know how it is sometimes between people. Sometimes words come easily between people. And so it was with them, for she told him about everything she loved, the great wild oceans and the creatures of the deep and the wild seabirds and the storms that she had known and the great tides and the powerful currents. And he told her of the wild boars and the stags and the wild fens and the deep woods and the spires and the trees and the sound of wild geese flying at night on a moonlit night. And on they spoke. But finally, she was tired. The wine was powerful, and she fell asleep. And he looked upon her, and he knew this is what he had longed for. This is what he wanted. And he dreamed that perhaps she could be his. Perhaps she would go with him. But the dreams of the night were quite different from the demands of the day. For he was under the command of a great Tsar. He was upon a mission that had to be completed, and yet he wanted this instead. And so, at first light, he lifted Vasilisa up, who was still asleep, and leapt ever so quietly, gently into the horse. And because the horse was as gentle as it was powerful, it rode so softly she remained asleep. And on and on and on he rode. Until the guards of the parapets, they cried out, ready? The hunter returns!
The hunter returns.
Vasilisa remained asleep, and the people looked upon her as the hunter brought her in and sat her on a throne beside the Tsar, and just at that moment, the bells of the palace began to ring. Can you give me some bells here?
Ding dong.
Excellent bell work here. We've been rehearsing this for a long time. And of course, with the bell, she woke up, and Vasilisa looked around and said, where am I? And what is the meaning of those bells? The Tsar said, Vasilisa, you're in my palace now. And the meaning of those bells is that our wedding day is soon to arrive. She took one look at him and knew she could never marry such a man. But she was in his palace now. She didn't have her same power there. And fortunately, she was as cunning and smart as she was beautiful. And she said, oh, I have longed to marry a great Tsar. And I will do just that as soon as I have my wedding dress. Vasilisa, you're in luck. We have made a beautiful wedding dress for you. And she said, I must have mine. Well, we will bring it to you. Where can we find your wedding dress? It lies in a golden chest at the edge of the world, at the bottom of the ocean. Ah, I have just the man who can bring it for us. Hunter, come here. Hunter, good to see you again. Hunter, Vasilisa, soon to be the Tsarina, she has a wedding dress. It lies in a golden chest, but there's one small problem, maybe two. It lies at the edge of the world. I think you know the place. From there, you have to go to the bottom of where? The ocean. So I know you will need time. I'd like it here by about 5 tomorrow. I love evening weddings, don't you? And if you return with a golden trunk, if it holds Vasilisa's dress, your shoulders, I promise, will still hold your head. Bring me the dress. And he went out to the horse. And now he was trembling, and the horse said, what is it now? And he said, now I must find Vasilisa's dress in a golden chest at the edge of the world, at the bottom of the ocean. And he said, I think I told you. If you picked up the feather, you would know. Oh. And he said, let's go. He jumped upon the back, and together they flew out again to the edge of the world. And the horse, he thundered down, and he stopped because he saw there upon the shore, about ready to slip under the wild waves, was the king of the crabs himself, the great crustacean king. And the horse fortunately spoke crab fluently. Why? Because it was a horseshoe crab. Oh. Bill Lepp's humor is just staining me left and right. It's your fault. It's your fault.
Just sitting here quietly, I was mostly asleep.
You will know the meaning of trouble. And the horse, he said, O great crustacean king, you must find the golden trunk that holds Vasilisa's dress. And the great crab king said, if it is for Vasilisa, every creature beneath the waves will conspire on her behalf, for she is our beloved princess. And into the waves he slipped, and down to the bottom of the ocean he went, and he climbed the tallest mountain at the bottom of the ocean, and he called out to all the 7 seas of the world. He said, my crabs, my servants, come to me, come to me. And soon the oceans boiled and crabs were all about him. Can you put your pictures out, crabs? Put your pictures good, right? And they said, how can we serve you? How can we serve you? Find the golden chest that holds Vasilisa's dress. We must conspire on her behalf. And they said, ready? It will be done! It will be done! Ready, crabs? And they dug, 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 and one of them found it. Who found it? Anybody find it yet? Anyone? No? There she is. Bill found it, yes. You got it, Bill?
Yeah, but I'm not giving it to you.
Then give it to somebody else, would you? Anyway, long story short, somebody came out with the golden chest, and the king of the crabs took it and said, you have done well, crab helper. Live long and prosper. What an original line. Now there wasn't much time. The hunter leapt upon the horse, and with the golden chest behind him, they flew across the earth beneath the wide sky. And once again, the guards on the parapets cried out and said, "Hunter returns! Hunter returns!" And he came in, and he brought the golden chest, and he sat it right there in front of Vasilisa. And the Tsar said, "Hunter, you have done well. We will now see if the golden chest holds Vasilisa's dress, which will also tell us if your shoulders hold your head." And Vasilisa, she opened the dress. She opened the golden chest, and she said, "Ah, it is my dress. Wonderful," the Tsar said. "At last we can be wed." But she said, "As soon as the hunter is punished." "Punished the hunter? He kidnapped me," she said. "He took me from my home." "Well, what should we do?" Vasily said. "Boil him alive in water." Vasily said, "This seems a bit severe. But you are about to be my Tsarina. I will honor your request." And so the wicked Tsar, he had an enormous cauldron, 12 feet wide, 8 feet deep, brought into the courtyard, filled with water, fire built beneath it, a platform built around it, a staircase up to it. And when the water was boiling and seething, and all the people gathered about, and now Vasilisa and the Tsar were seated in thrones beside the cauldron, the guards, they dragged the hunter up the steps and across the platform. And just as they were about to throw him in, he said, "Wait! My Tsar, I have one request. I have served you long and well. I desire to see my horse one last time. That is the last request of your life, to see your horse. I will allow it, but hurry up, you're holding up my wedding." He went to the stable, and he was weeping. And the horse said, "Why do you weep?" And he said, "Because I'm about to be boiled in water." And the horse said, "Who was it that requested this?" And the hunter said, "It was Vasilisa." And the horse said, "This is not so bad. Do what I tell you. Do not allow the guards to throw you into the water. You must throw yourself into the water." And the hunter said, "You call this advice?" And the horse said, "I have never lied to you. I never will. It is beyond my nature to do so. But now, you must trust me, hunter, without understanding. Throw yourself into the water." The hunter, trembling, he went to the staircase. The guards seized him, they dragged him up the stairs. And in that moment, somehow he looked down and he saw Vasilisa. And he noticed, in one glance that she gave him, it said, "All will be well." It was the same glance that she had given him on that night. And somehow the hunter, he found the strength to break free from the grasp of the guards. And all the people knew what he would do. They knew he would flee down the steps, leap over the wall, onto his horse. And of course, he did the exact opposite of what everyone thought he would do. He turned and faced the cauldron of water. And to everyone's amazement, he ran across the platform, leapt up, and poosh, disappeared into the cauldron. And the people, they groaned, for they loved the hunter. But they saw him as he struggled to find his way up and up and up. But down again he went, into the great heat, into the boiling and seething water. And he came up a second time, and again down he went. And now he was there for so long, the people knew that he could not survive. And had you been outside of that realm on that day, you would have heard a hush, followed by a great cheer. For the hunter leapt from the cauldron, somehow onto the platform, and all could see he was 3 times as strong, 3 times as noble, 3 times as brave. And the Tsar, he was astounded. He noticed everybody admiring the hunter. He noticed even Vasilisa admiring the hunter. And he said, "Vasilisa, I'm thinking a thought I never would have thought had the hunter not jumped into the cauldron. And I'm thinking the thought is this: if that cauldron of boiling water can have such a profound and beneficial effect upon a mere hunter, imagine what it could do for me, great Tsar." And Vasilisa said, "Go for it, Tsar." She said, "I await your transformation." To the people's astonishment, the Tsar now climbed up the steps. And just like the hunter, he too flew across the platform, leapt up into the sky, disappeared into the great heat. And he too struggled and struggled, but found his way up one time and went down again. And found his way up a second time, but down again he went. And he did indeed come up a third time. And the boiling water of the cauldron had as profound effect upon the Tsar as it did upon the hunter, but profoundly different. Whereas the cauldron of boiling water removed all fear from the heart of the hunter, it removed all flesh from the bones of the Tsar. Which is to say, it wasn't so much the Tsar that emerged as the skeleton of the Tsar. And the people, they took the skeleton of that wicked Tsar, and they put him into a great coffin, and they buried him deeply and well, and put great stones upon the coffin. And when the songs were sung and the prayers were said, the people turned from death and the graveyard back to the palace and life. And just like that, all upon their own, the bells of the palace began to ring. And you know how it is, in the ringing of the bells, there was a ringing in the memory of the people. They remembered now that not only was a Tsarina needed, but wasn't a Tsar needed now as well? And they decided that perhaps the hunter would make a good Tsar, and since it was Vasilisa's desire, she became the Tsarina. And they ruled wisely and well, and they cared for the great firebird, and in time it regained its strength and its radiance. And one day, as all the people gathered, Vasilisa said, with the great cage and the firebird in it, "The firebird will never be captive in this realm." And it was she that opened the cage door. And the great bird once again flew into the sky, circled around that castle and that realm for 3 days' time. And during that time, once again, the people saw in ways they hadn't seen for a long time. They knew feelings so deep that they hadn't felt in a long time. And on, and finally it flew away. And although it hasn't been seen for quite some time, you could be walking home from this storytelling gathering tonight, or sometime tomorrow. You could see one of those golden feathers lying in front of you. And I promise you, if you pick it up, you will know wonder and passion, beauty and delight. And you will know the meaning of the story of the firebird. Thank you.
I've been telling that story for a long time. I haven't been telling that story. That was magnificent. Magnificent. We're going to have like a 5-minute recess. There are books and CDs over there and posters. Help yourself. Say hi to someone you don't know. Say hi to someone you do know. And we'll be back in 5 minutes.